Welcome back to the channel, you guys. Here is an Evo X MR DCT, okay? It has been exactly 10 years since Mitsubishi announced that they were ceasing production on the Evo. A very sad moment in the Japanese car community, and I haven't driven an Evo X in, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. So today, I just want to find out how well the Evo X has aged. It's not as loved, of course, as the earlier Evos, but has it aged well? Let's go for a drive. 7 years have passed. I have a lot more experience, new cars, old cars, automatics, manuals. So I'm hoping I can bring like kind of a new perspective for the Evo X. Maybe I was a little bit harsh. I remember being harsh on the car, but that was only because I had driven all these crazy Evo 8s and Evo 9s. Patrick's car, infamous Evo, one of the first I drove, crazy builds, and especially my favorite, the Evo 5, blew me out of the water and how analog and aggressive that car was. And I remember the Evo X just feeling like a computer on wheels. So let's see if that is still the case here. Laser precise steering. The one I'm driving today is a DCT. So crazy to me that Mitsubishi had a dual clutch transmission in the Evo when this launched in 2007. We've got massive aftermarket paddle shifters here, fixed to the steering column, much like a Ferrari would be. If you guys don't know, this 6-speed DCT was developed by Getrag for the Evo X. So it wasn't kind of an afterthought. They weren't doing it just to look like they were on the technological forefront at the time. It really was a performance benefit. This Evo X MR DCT I'm driving is probably the quickest Evo X around a track, not counting the limited edition models, of which there were many, especially outside North America. Let's dive into the corners, enough talking. Down into second. Wow. Yeah, about as laser precise and glued to the road as I remember an Evo being. Power out, zero understeer on the exit. So yeah, obviously I would prefer to be driving a manual. The dual clutch is pretty good, especially when I'm in sport mode. So on my drive out here, I was in the normal drive setting, which is not the same as the center differential settings, which of course, with the ACD, active center differential, you have tarmac, gravel, and snow, which changes up how the clutches in the center differential lock up. So that's not this. This is just a specific drive mode. On the way out here, I was in normal mode. And the transmission felt, it was showing its age. Coming off the line, you had to be so smooth to get it to feel like just an automatic, and it was comfortable street daily driving. If you gave it even a little bit more than like grandma level throttle off the line, it would like clunk. I would feel the clutch, or the clutches like smack up, and then it would kind of go. It was a bit jarring. But then we got out to our roads out here, and Dylan, the owner of this car, told me, hey, make sure you have it in sport, not only because it'll be a much more pleasant driving experience, but because the transmission will actually last longer that way. And that was my initial impression, was like, this is a transmission that performs better and smoother and rewards hard driving. Light steering. The steering absolutely offers less feel than, let's say, an Evo 8 or 9. This one's pretty stock. It's got a Greddy catback exhaust. Well, it's a turbo back, but then he put a high flow cat in it. We've got an intake, and it's tuned on cob. So it's seen the dyno. It has a custom dyno tune. About 300 wheel here. They came stock with about 291, I believe, horsepower and 300 pound-feet. Red line, I think rev limit is 7,600, but red line on the tach is right at 7. Automatically shifted from second to third there. But after that, we're gone. Wow, great brake feel. I love the way this brake pedal feels. It's really soft. The top little bit of the pedal is nothing, and then it gets real firm. You gotta really want it. We've also got upgraded rotors here. So these are a 2-piece lightweight rotor. Reduces rotational mass. And of course the TEs here. Oh, it wants to be on a track so bad. I mean, what was it about the Evo 10 that people didn't like when it was new, and what I didn't like about it? It feels like a computer on wheels. It feels much less raw than the Evo 8s and 9s. It's more comfortable. The wheelbase is longer than by about 1 inch. It doesn't look as good, in my opinion, than an Evo 8 or Evo 9. And there was less direct road feel coming through. That's still very apparent here, but the context has changed. That was ahead of its time in 07. You know, it was about lap times, dual clutch, and the addition of and the further integration of the active yaw control and the back real torque vectoring, where the rear diff can send and distribute the rear torque to either left or right wheel. That's integrated further in the Evo 10 with the ABS system and the stability control. It also brake vectors. It does real torque vectoring, but it also will brake vector to keep the grip as, you know, keep the car as glued to the road as humanly possible. So yeah, it was an evolution. It was an evolution in the system, but for lap times, they were too early. They were 15 years too early, because now, in today's automotive climate, this car, I feel, would do amazing. The Evo 10 dual clutch was 10 years too early, to put it simply. Remember, this was around the time the R35 GTR was launched, with an unapologetic focus on lap times, bragging rights, and the tech surrounding it. Ferrari didn't even have a dual clutch in a mid-engine street car until a year after the Evo 10 was launched. At the time, the vast majority of Evo buyers opted for that 5-speed manual. Those obsessed with lap times and laziness just didn't exist like they do today. And perhaps that's a bit of a metaphor for our culture at large here in 2024. Look around now though, and the market is just saturated. Veloster N DCT, Mercedes 835 and 845 AMG, CLA 45 AMG, Golf R, and of course, the Audi S3 and RS3. We're obsessed with those last milliseconds of efficiency that a dual clutch promises. I can hear click, clack, click. I can hear the dual clutch moving. That amount of non-refinement would not fly today. I mean, it is undeniable. The Evo 10 is a masterclass in precision, grip, and lap times, and that's what people care about. It's bragging, like today, it's bragging rights. It's lap times. Hey, I have the fastest lap time. That's what people seem to care about more than anything today, versus what the older Evos were about, which was embracing the homologation rally pedigree and bringing that onto the road. And that's why, if you were wondering, the Evo 10 is not as loved. And I personally would much rather have an Evo 8 or 9. That's just me. Please let me know. I do want to hear your thoughts, especially if you've driven both an Evo 9 or 10. It's one thing if you've only driven an Evo 10 and you love it and I would never have an 8 or 9. Well, maybe if you drove one, you would be swayed in the other direction, but maybe not. Like, it really does feel more so than an Evo 9 that it's doing a lot of the work for you. It makes you feel like a hero. Surprising how the dual clutch has held up though. Upshifts especially. The downshifts are a little bit like, it'll blip really nicely, perfectly every time, of course. But then you can kind of feel, it's like a two-step process. It's like it'll blip and then you'll feel it kind of catch. So there is a little bit of a change, but it's better in sport mode here than it was in normal mode, but it's no PDK. I'll tell you that much. It is no PDK. HKS coilovers on here too, so we're not on stock suspension. Yeah, Dylan's also gone ahead and put this aftermarket head unit in here, fully integrated into the dash. It looks like it could be stock, especially because it's one piece with the vents. He has this aftermarket steering wheel, at least the outside is, so we've got leather where it should be, where you touch the most contact points, and then Alcantara on the top and bottom, which is held up wonderfully. Lots of carbon fiber in here, typical Evo stuff, stock Recaros. God, the car is just so eager though. The throttle's tuned in such a way where even just the slightest bit on the top of the pedal initiates lots of torque. Of course, one of the downsides is that this new engine here, once they got rid of the 4G63, is aluminum block versus the 4G63, of course, which is iron block. Probably can take a little bit more boost, a little bit more abuse. I'm just curious. I actually have no idea what the tuning potential is with this engine compared to the 4G63. Please let me know in the comments, you guys, if you can enlighten me. And let me know kind of what the limits of this block are, the engine components versus the 4G63. It's funny too, looking at the center screen here in between the TAC and the Speedo, seeing, you know, your tarmac, gravel, drive modes. It looks like a Game Boy. It's like an 8-bit Game Boy screen. And it's just funny to me that a car that was so advanced for the time, it was all like hidden underneath. This car doesn't, to me, doesn't look like anything special, but it is. It's just underneath the surface. It's this like complex computer programming that does so much for you, and you never thank it. You take it for granted. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon.